Right, Caddy, we have breaking news right now. Joe Biden has just, according to Jonathan Mir, has just issued a series of pardons of significant.
Just now, a statement from the President of the United States, Joe Biden, talking about the defensive need to defend public servants. And he's offering pardons. He is pardoning now. I'll just read from it. I'm exercising my authority under the Constitution to pardon General Mark A. Milley, Dr. Anthony S. Fauci, the members of Congress and staff who served on the January 6th Select Committee, and U.S. Capitol and D.C. Metropolitan Police officers who testified before the Select Committee. He goes on to say the issuance of these pardons should not be mistaken as an acknowledgement that any individual engaged in any wrongdoing, nor should acceptance be misconstrued as an admission of guilt for any offense. And just backing up a moment, we have known for months now speculation that there would be these preemptive pardons issued by the White House. There were some people wanted them, others did not. But a remarkable, historic moment here in just his final hours of the presidency, issuing pardons for those who very much were targeted by Donald Trump and his allies for potential for prosecution and retribution.
I think what's significant about these particular names, Willie, especially for the January 6th committee, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, and of course all the Democrats on the committee, is that the incoming president, in his interview on Meet the Press several weeks ago, after being elected, because there is, you know, it's one thing to be saying it in the heat of a campaign, but after being elected, saying that the people serving on the January 6th committee should go to jail, that obviously probably made Joe Biden more ready for those pardons. Of course, Mark Milley, he said what he said about Mark Milley. Same with Fauci and the U.S. Capitol Police.
These are being offered.
They're being offered. So they're being offered.
That's correct.
So they have to accept those.
They have to accept them. Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the limousine ride just got more interesting.
Yes,
the
it
one
did.
We've been talking about
that's going to be
when
something.
President Biden and the president-elect ride over from the White House to the Capitol. The president ends the statement by saying the issuance of these pardons should not be mistaken as an acknowledgement that any individual engaged in any wrongdoing, nor should acceptance be misconstrued as an admission of guilt for any offense. That was part of the reason some of these people, and we'll see if they accept these pardons, that said, I don't want a pardon. Because by accepting it, it implies that I've done something wrong, and I haven't. So it'll be interesting to see now they've been offered. There are 4.5 hours left in President Biden's presidency. Claire, it'll be interesting to see if they take them.
And
it makes me sad.
Yeah.
It makes me sad. First of all, it sets a precedent. Can you imagine the list 4 years from now? Not good. And frankly, it shows that we have gotten to the point that we no longer trust the institutions of our courts to fairly administer the laws. Because I think the people who say I don't want a pardon are saying that because they know factually there is no evidence to do anything to them. So I get it, and I'm not being critical of the president for doing it, but it's sad. It is very, very sad, and it's another blow to the institution of rule of law in this country.
Claire, I have a question. Maybe you can answer it. I don't know. Maybe someone else here can answer it. Do these pardons offered this morning, do they time out with the demise of the Biden presidency?
No.
They don't?
No.
Okay.
Let's go right now to NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. Gabe, of course, some breaking.
Just broke.
This obviously breaking news on the offering of pardons to Liz Cheney, Mark Milley, members of the January 6th committee. That
Anthony
includes
Fauci.
Adam Kinzinger, Anthony Fauci, obviously, as Willie said, the limousine ride over to the Capitol just got a little more interesting.
Yeah, certainly, Joe, Mika, Willie, good morning. It did get a whole lot more interesting. And this is something that we had known that the White House, that the president was considering now for quite some time, this idea of preempted pardons. And if you could look further at the statement, he says, I cannot in good conscience do nothing baseless and politically motivated investigations wreak havoc on the lives, safety, and financial security of targeted individuals and their family. This is something, Joe and Mika, that President Biden had been wrestling with over the last several weeks. And so now, hearing this just several hours before he is set to leave the Oval Office here behind me on this chilly day in Washington, of course, expected to be a very busy morning here. The president-elect set to leave Blair House in just a short time, go to church, and then in the 9 o'clock hour, he is set to be welcomed here in the White House for the traditional tea and coffee here with President Biden before then heading off to the Capitol in the 10 o'clock hour. So very busy morning, of course, on Inauguration Day, as it always is. A little different this morning, of course, with these chilly temperatures here outside. But again, that breaking news, President Biden just before leaving office issuing those preemptive pardons. Joe and Mika.
All right. Okay. Can I ask you, Claire, just personally, I know it's impossible to put yourself in that position. Obviously, if you are in the position of, say, Mark Milley or Anthony Fauci or Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger or the Democrats on that committee or the Capitol Hill police officers,
what do you do?
I mean, the thing is, even if the courts throw any potential charges out, the costs that would fall, especially on the shoulders of those Capitol Hill cops, would be crushing. So I'm curious, what if you were their attorney, what would you advise them to do?
Well, first of all, there's nothing in this pardon that keeps Congress from going after them.
Right.
I mean, that's what you need to remember, that their lives can still be majorly disrupted if a phony special committee is formed by Johnson, and they all have to come in and testify.
We're just talking about the criminal charges here.
I mean, they could always investigate on the assumption there might be other people that wouldn't pardon around them that committed laws. If this was a guarantee that their lives would not be disrupted by vengeance in the Trump administration, I think that's one consideration, yes. And frankly, they won't be disrupted as much if they accept these pardons, because they really can't begin a direct investigation criminally into somebody who already has a pardon.
Right.
But it is a hell of a precedent to set in this country to do something like this. And it opens the door for other people who are not as honorable as Joe Biden to do it in the future.
What would your advice to them be as an attorney?
My advice to them, I mean, I'm a combative attorney. I like to get in the courtroom and go for it. If one of these people, I would lay out, this is probably what's going to happen. This is probably the cost in your lives if they decide to investigate you, but there is no evidence. And I would probably come down on the side of saying, let them come. Let's show them that there's no evidence.
Jonathan Lemire.
So White House officials I've been texting with in the last few minutes say these are pardons are signed. They are in effect. We have not yet heard from the members who have received them. We'll see if they want to have public comments later in the day. It's unclear if we'll hear more from the president on this matter. We will get remarks from President Biden later today. He is giving a farewell address to staff at Joint Base Andrews after the inauguration ceremony. That'll be about 2 o'clock or so, I believe. We'll see if he addresses it then. But this list of pardons. These are signed. They are official, and it's an historic moment.